It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Climate engineering, so-called solar radiation mitigation, geoengineering, aka weather, chemical, and biological warfare, man's malevolent attempt to play God with the weather while simultaneously slow-culling the herd. That's us. Welcome to the Bad News Broadcast. First headline, Geoengineering, a moral hazard or possibly useful tool? Question mark. That's from energyworld.com. Let's stop there. Quote, a useful tool, end quote. Question, tool for doing exactly what? And useful to exactly who? And to what end? The report refers to Dr. David Keith, someone I have a bit of a history with. If you want to see me confronting Dr. David Keith at an international geoengineering conference, please view the dimming. It's there. Dr. David Keith pushing his objective of dumping tens of millions of tons of highly toxic aluminum nanoparticles into the atmosphere annually. And he had no idea, or wouldn't admit to, the obvious toxicological impacts to everything alive. No exceptions. Moving on, more weather warfare headlines from thesun.com. Raining hell. Apocalyptic flash floods, seas of icy fog and frozen battlefields. How wars could be fought with weaponized weather. Report states weather sabotage could set off a dangerous chain of events that we have little control over. Let's stop there. No, not could, may, might set off a dangerous chain of events. Already has. And with each passing day, the weather terrorists continue to double down on their insanity. Here's another headline from news.com.au. World War III could be fought with weaponized weather. Here's one more, same theme, this one from the dailymirror.com. Extreme weather could be weaponized to fight World War III, say military experts. Mind-numbing how this denial can be carried on with the atrocities in our skies so shockingly visible for decades. And about that denial, I'll get to that at the end of this broadcast. Deeper insight into it. Climate disruption operations are and have long since been the crown jewel weapon of the controllers, the weapon with which they can bring populations and even whole countries to their knees and blame nature. They can and have long since been doing exactly that. Here's a question. Where are the hurricanes? U.S. patent number US 202501481766A1. This is a brand new patent this year. Severe Weather Vortex Disruption System and Method. Application filed by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. How about that? Filed 10/10 of last year. Priority to US 18912-204. That means it's approved on 1/30 of this year, assigned to the U.S. government of the United States of America as represented by the Secretary of Homeland Security. Why does the Secretary of Homeland Security need to hold a hurricane manipulation patent? The patent then states abandoned on it, right? Yeah, we believe that. Just like they've denied any involvement in weather warfare for how many decades when it's undeniable all over the world. Whatever the weather terrorists have planned for the coming hurricanes, they will likely continue to miss oil drilling infrastructure in the Gulf of Mexico, but likely not the same outcome for populations. From any perspective, derailing the planet's desperate attempts to cool itself with these cyclonic rotations can only lead to further cataclysm. If you think it's bad now, you won't like what's coming. Wait and see. Moving on. What else is the criminal cabal masquerading as our government up to? What are they omitting from their theater of mass distraction? From CBS News, let's start with this. Follow me through. It'll make sense. RFK Jr. testifies at Senate hearing amid CDC chaos. Let's stop there. Here's a simple summary of what this orchestrated circus Senate hearing was really all about. Maximum division, distraction, and polarization of the population to ensure that they don't look up, that they don't connect the puzzle pieces and that they don't see the oncoming train of total collapse until the moment of impact. Both sides of the RFK Senate hearing circus claiming to care deeply about our children, their health, and their futures, which will never come to pass unless or until the highly toxic geoengineering atmospheric aerosol dispersions are addressed, exposed, and halted. Our filth-filled skies aren't just covert weather warfare. It is also chemical and biological warfare with the plethora of highly toxic nanoparticles, tens of millions of tons, in fact, annually, aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, polymer fibers, surfactants, graphene, and likely a long list of biologicals that we can't yet identify. All of this raining down through our breathable air column, a ubiquitous contamination of the entire planet with nanoparticles that are both bioavailable and bioaccumulative, most harmful to our children. A threat from which there is virtually no escape, and not a single word from the orchestrated so-called safe and effective theater from either side of that fence. A theater that, again, is specifically designed to polarize and divide populations and to distract them from the dire and immediate threat in our skies. This is an existential threat. Planet collapsing from countless directions, normalcy bias is being fed by the controllers along with Stockholm Syndrome. Populations are completely asleep at the wheel with very few exceptions. I will address this in greater depth and detail later in this broadcast. For the record, if we remain on the current course with the nanoparticle spraying and frequency transmission battlefield in our skies raging on, no one gets out alive. That's not theory, it's not speculation, it's not hypothesis, it's a mathematical certainty. No nuclear holocaust is even needed, though that will unfortunately very likely be added to the equation soon enough. Not just nuclear war, but the meltdown of 442 nuclear power plants all over the world. Welcome to the next planet Venus. Climate engineering making all of it worse, not better, weakening our formerly protective atmosphere, making us susceptible to CMEs, coronal mass ejections, which will shut down power grids all over the world, which will cause the power plants to go into meltdown. Then let's add a few nuclear exchanges, which circles in Washington are openly discussing as, quote, a way to cool down the planet. Total insanity, orbiting asylum. The entire planet has already been contaminated. Every single drop of rain, every breath of air. If the insanity in our skies isn't brought to an immediate halt, all other causes, all other concerns will soon be moot points. This includes everything discussed at the Senate hearings I mentioned a moment ago. All moot points on a dead planet. The threat isn't just to the human race. The entire web of life, from the clouds to the ground, is being systematically contaminated, poisoned from our skies, from geoengineering jet-sprayed dispersions that we are officially told aren't really there, just our imagination, or the beat-to-death official denial of, quote, it's just condensation, just jet exhaust, a blatant glaring lie. Search the jet spraying section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. See with your own eyes what far too many are still desperately trying to deny. Consider that even with imminent planetary omnicide staring down the human race, the political actors are also distracting with so-called redistricting. They clamor about, quote, our democracy being at stake, end quote. Newsflash, dead planet, no people, no more problem with redistricting. What absolutely pitiful priorities from our so-called elected officials that should be looking up and taking action. Moving on, more not-so-fun facts. How dark is the horizon? How many actually want to know? Here's the headline. Scientists warn planet unsafe. Report reveals 60% of global land now beyond limits as governments struggle with escalating environmental threats. From that report, a groundbreaking study reveals that human activities have pushed Earth's biosphere to a critical tipping point, threatening the planet's ability to sustain life and prompting urgent calls for immediate global action. The integrity, report says, of Earth's biosphere is under unprecedented threat, according to a recent study that sheds light on the planet's declining ability to maintain ecological balance. The concept of planetary boundaries serves as a framework to evaluate Earth's ecological limits, which we have blown past, by the way. through the guardrail. The report then says the study paints a stark picture of the pressures on Earth's ecosystems over the past century. By 1900, substantial portions of global land had already exceeded safe ecological thresholds, with 37% in a precarious state and 14% in high-risk zones. Fast forward to today, and those numbers have climbed to 60%. Yes, that sounds bad, but in reality, it's even worse. Here's a bit from AI, and no, of course, I'm not condoning AI anything. I'm just pointing out what can no longer be hidden or denied, even from AI. Quote, yes, there is strong scientific evidence suggesting Earth's life support systems are collapsing, driven by human activities such as climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Key systems like the global climate, freshwater cycle, ocean health, and the stability of ecosystems are failing or nearing critical tipping points, far past tipping points already. The statement continues with this: scientists warn that these interconnected systems are essential for human life, and their continued degradation poses a grave existential threat. How obvious can that fact be? Yes, it does. Existential threat. Exactly what I've been desperately trying to sound the alarm about for over 2 decades. What has taken the climate science community, and in this case AI, so long to tell the truth? And as dire as all the recent reports and assessments are, none of them even mention, let alone consider, the climate engineering factor, which makes the entire equation exponentially more dire and more immediate. Those who truly care, not just about themselves, but about their posterity and the miracle web of life, will join us in this fight to expose and halt the climate engineering atrocities. Please, please do not sit the bench. From environmentalhealthnews.org, this headline: the planet's largest ecosystems could collapse faster than we thought. Correction, not could, may, might, already is. And the faster than we thought part. How many times over and over in this broadcast have we had to address headlines like that? That is exactly what I stated long before these headlines came along. It's far worse than anything we're being told. And now that's starting to be admitted to. Why? Because they suddenly want to tell the truth? No, because they can no longer hide the severity and immediacy of what's unfolding. In that report, massive vital ecosystems that have existed for thousands of years or more could break down in just a few decades, according to a new study. If put under the kind of environmental stress increasingly seen on our planet, large ecosystems such as the Amazon rainforest or the Caribbean coral reefs could collapse in just a few decades, according to a study released today in Nature Communications. Stop. Correction. Again. Not could, not may, not might collapse in a few decades. These ecosystems are already in their death throes, circling the drain. Collapse isn't just coming, it has already kicked in the front door. More denial from the UK Express. Scientist makes horror prediction that the world will collapse in just 25 years. Again, correction. Collapse is here, now. This example to consider. The bus carrying the human race has already crashed through the guardrail. It's sailing through the air on the way to the bottom of the proverbial abyss, and even now, the passengers are partying it up with eyes wide shut. Bread and circus till the brutal, bitter end. And for the record, I'm not referring to those that are simply trying to survive another day, and they know who they are. And there are countless around the globe in that position. And in so many cases, what they had or should have had was taken by the empires and the empire's populations that are using those resources to do the partying till the brutal bitter end. That's how the entire paradigm has worked. And now the time has come to pay the price. This is Dane Wigington. You're listening to the weekly installment of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Report, The End of the World as We Know It broadcast, brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of global climate engineering operations, aka weather warfare. Quick footnote, for those that truly want to help sound the alarm, very effective climate engineering awareness-raising materials are available on the homepage of Geoengineeringwatch.org. This is the only item we make available, something to help the fight. Full color printed materials, which we pass on for less than our cost of producing and shipping, and Geoengineering Watch shirts, also hoodies, now with restocked sizes new colors. Join us in this fight. Start a conversation. Start a spot fire of awareness. Time is not on our side. A footnote reminder. So-called Maha means absolutely nothing. Zero. Unless or until the toxic aerosol dispersion atrocities in our skies are fully exposed and halted. But so far, only more cover-up and denial from all official sources. Moving on. More examples of orchestrated firestorms being utilized as a form of solar radiation management. Yes, firestorm smoke is temporarily and toxically able to cool parts of the planet, followed by an even worse overall warming. Please don't believe any of the data I cite in this broadcast. Please investigate for yourself, starting with the Engineering Wildfires section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Specific report, one of our most important wildfires serve geoengineering agenda. From the Weather Channel. On this note, this theme, nearly 5,000 lightning strikes ignite new California wildfires, happens week after week. In the wee hours of Tuesday morning this week, dry thunderstorms, aka storms with little to no rain, set off thousands of lightning strikes across California's Central Valley and Bay Area. Those storms sparked wildfires that had hundreds of people waking up to evacuation orders. Again and again and again. Fire season is all year now. When you ionize the atmosphere, when you dry up the precipitation, when you dry out the forests, when you cover them with an incendiary dust, which is what climate engineering elements are as they settle down to the surface, you end up with fires everywhere. And when we have peer-reviewed study advocating for the intentional burning of forests as a form of solar radiation management, how insane can this equation become, and what will it take to wake people up? And no, it's not just the Beatles. So sick of hearing that term from so-called experts that are either criminally ignorant of the very field in which we're told they're experts, or they're lying. Take your pick. Geoengineering, climate engineering, weather warfare, single greatest causal factor regarding the fires everywhere on the planet. I'm not talking about the source of ignition. Too many online so-called self-proclaimed truth tellers with all sorts of completely fabricated narratives on the ignition of the fires. I'm talking about what is setting the template for these fires to burn with such ferocity. Any moron with a match can light a fire. The main point in this equation is what is setting the template for these fires to burn with such ferocity, and that's climate engineering. Moving on, what else is broken on planet Earth? About one of the planet's primary heat distribution systems, it's hurtling toward total collapse. From oneearthnow.org, Atlantic current system shutdown risk. This is an ongoing story, more serious than many people realize. Week after week, they start alluding to the fact that they've been horribly conservative with how bad things really are. The report says what must not get overlooked is the rapidly changing and destabilizing climate and physical breakdown of our planet's life support systems. Exactly. From every conceivable direction, and even now, the single most disruptive factor of all, the single most destabilizing factor of all, climate engineering, continues to be denied by the so-called climate experts that are criminally lying at this point. When will they grow a backbone, summon some courage, band together, stand up, and tell the truth? When? But wait, what about this headline? From Newsweek, hundreds of thousands face rare summer frost warning. They say take steps now to protect tender plants from the cold. That's from the National Weather Service. That's what they told residents in affected regions. Welcome to chemical ice nucleation. These are regions that recently had record heat and are going back to that likely after this chemical surface cool down. And that's exactly what it is. We've tested this frozen material even in some of the regions that are now receiving this chemical flash freeze with sensationalized headlines, so that people think, oh, it can't be that warm, can it? Look at the frost in these specific areas. A very shallow layer of surface cold, chemically induced from migrating moisture. That's why we have baseball and softball size hail everywhere. More on that in a moment. Pressing on from AccuWeather, polar air to bring October-like chill to 250 million in central and eastern U.S. Yes, the most anomalously less warm region in the entire world for 13 years running, the eastern half of the lower 48, which is where most Americans live, and that's keeping them oblivious to unfolding planetary meltdown. Biggest military in the world, U.S. military, by far biggest. 3 times more aerial tankers used for climate engineering operations, 3 times more than all other militaries in the world combined, keeping their populations oblivious. Normalcy bias till the brutal bitter end. This is the kind of headline that the climate engineers love. They say a surge of polar air will sweep across much of the central and eastern U.S., sending temperatures tumbling to October-like levels with chilly nights and even water spouts over the Great Lakes. A large buckle in the jet stream, which they can also manipulate with ionosphere heater-induced high-pressure zones, will push southward toward the Great Lakes region. Daytime highs are likely to run 10 to 20 degrees below historical averages. That's a 30-year record, the most recent 30 years, which is not a true historical baseline. Every recent bracket of 30 years is higher than the 30 years before. The bar keeps going up. In cloudy, rainy locations, temperatures could dip as much as 30 degrees below historical averages. This pattern will bring clouds and chilly showers, possibly mixed with small pellets of soft hail known as grapple. All sorts of strange frozen things falling out of the sky when they're chemically nucleating. Then they end with this, as I just stated. Many of the same areas experiencing the chill could shift back to midsummer-like temperatures with higher humidity and highs up to 90. Weather whiplash. Engineered weather whiplash. What will it take to wake Americans the hell up? Extreme alterations of scheduled temperatures. Northern California, going back about 10 days, something like that. They showed Tuesday this week being at about 95 degrees. Then a few days later, they showed it at 100. A few days later, 102, then 105, then 110. Sunday of last week, they showed Tuesday would be 110, and then on Monday, they dropped it back down to 95. They have no idea, and we were covered on Tuesday by a massive chemical cloud in Northern California. The train is totally and completely off the rails, with scheduled weather reports whiplashing hourly at times. And this is, again, a script passed down by ultimately Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, who do all the weather modeling for the National Weather Service and NOAA. The two federal agencies are government scientists, are government weather personnel that have an illegal gag order on all agency operations. So, are the planet's life support systems breaking down by the day? Yes. Is the planet hurtling toward total meltdown? Yes. Are climate engineering operations further fueling the fire in the attempt to mask what is unfolding, while simultaneously using weather as a covert weapon of war? Yes. Are climate engineering operations the only problem with the climate system? Absolutely not. How perplexing it is that so many continue to cling to such a false conclusion, which hurts the credibility of our cause. Any form of human activity that negatively impacts the planet's natural functions is a part of the problem. We must acknowledge that fact. The list of destructive human activities is almost endless. When the intentional climate disruption operations are stacked on top of it all, that's a formula for certain near-term planetary omnicide. On that note of not-so-good cheer from the UK Guardian, summer 2025 was the hottest on record in the UK, says the Met Office. All 5 of the hottest summers on record in the UK have now occurred in the last 5 years. Imagine that. From ChinaDaily.com, China sees hottest summer ever. High humidity will continue to exacerbate the sweltering conditions. Yes, it will. It's called the wet bulb effect, the heat index temperatures, and they're going off the charts. Another from The Guardian, this was the hottest summer on record. If it happens again next year, Britain's ecosystems won't cope. A future of extreme heat waves, drought, and collapsing habitats awaits if we continue to ignore the danger signs. Let's start by acknowledging climate engineering, UK Guardian. That would be a good start. From weather.com, extreme heat waves are pushing animals to the brink of extinction. Many have already passed that brink. We've been losing 200 to 300 species of plant, animal, and insect to extinction a day. Try to ponder that one. That's 15,000 times the background rate. That's 1.5 million of normal. We are neck deep in the 6th great mass extinction right now. The report says unlike traditional droughts, which unfold gradually over months or even years due to prolonged lack of rainfall, flash droughts occur much faster. They typically emerge when low precipitation coincides with abnormally high temperatures, often during heat waves, along with high winds and shifts in solar radiation. Ionosphere heater-induced high-pressure heat dome and desiccant particles, translation, flash drought. They can do it anytime they want, anywhere they want. From extremetemps.com, Canada heat wave. Intense heat spreads north and east into Alberta and Northwest Territories. Report says this will just get worse with an early autumn heat wave, which will rewrite climatic history by breaking multiple world records all over the globe. Meltdown. Also from extremetemps.com, historic western U.S. heat wave. I can testify to that. Like living in hell in Northern California. We rarely see clouds any real clouds. It's only this sprayed filth in our skies day in, day out. Unbelievably hazy, not smoke in so many cases, just haze falling to the surface, and no one notices a thing. Trees dead and dying around Redding in so many places, many species. Some look okay for the moment. They won't for much longer. No one notices the science fiction skies. Mind-numbing. From the UK Guardian, the shocking reality of indoor heat deaths in Arizona, much more than people thought, now being reported. From Newsweek, this is a week-old report that I didn't get to in my last broadcast, but it needs to be heard and considered. Alaska cities could feel as hot as parts of Texas. That just happened again a week ago. They say the end of summer has brought contrasting weather across the country. A cold front ushered in below average temperatures in many states. And the cold front is just them chemically nucleating atmospheric moisture that they migrate wherever they want and then chemically nucleate it. And the cold air descends to the surface, and they call it a cold front. Dropping temperatures as far as 30 degrees below average for parts of the central and southern plains, including Texas. Meanwhile, abnormally high temperatures have hit the Pacific Northwest and parts of Alaska, prompting heat-related weather alerts. Yellowknife, farthest north habitation into the Arctic Circle, was 30 degrees hotter than parts of Texas. Think about that. Just like the New Orleans blizzards and Florida blizzards this January, when it was above freezing and raining in Alaska, Greenland, Iceland, Siberia, nobody said a word about that, did they? From the New York Times, climate change is transforming summer in Europe. In Europe, which has warmed about twice as fast as the global average, climate change has begun to force difficult questions about the economic and cultural cost of adapting. You can't adapt to a dead planet. And there's no legitimate discussion about climate anything from any perspective without including climate engineering, aka weather warfare. That must be brought to light and to a halt, and we are rapidly running out of time. From Euronews.com, how flash droughts driven by climate change sparked record firestorms in Spain. Yes, disaster there. Portugal as well. From extremetemps.com, summer in winter continues in South Africa with tropical nights and record heat. From climatechangenews.com, Bangladesh heat waves hit health hard, making life a costly business. Let's stop there. No, not just, quote, costly business. Unendurable would be the correct term. The heat index temperatures are increasing off the charts due to the ever-increasing humidity. I'm going to go through a lot of headlines. There's so many around the globe. I'm only giving a sliver of them, but that's to give an indication of just how bad it is. From extremetemps.com, East Asia endless record heat. From shafak.com, worst case scenario, fishermen walk across the Tigris River. That's in Iraq. They've had their rain cut off, as I covered in a previous broadcast, 40 years by NATO and its allies. I wonder why they hate us so much. The Tigris River, once a vital waterway running through the heart of Baghdad, has receded to such low levels that fishermen are now able to walk deep into its bed in search of fish, dying fish. From turkeytoday.com, turkey farmers suffer crop losses of up to 85% amid drought and heat. How long does anyone think that can continue? 85%. More from extremetemps.com, another winter heat wave in South America. And this from the same source, extraordinary heat in Central America and the Caribbean, all over, except the eastern U.S., at least for the moment. From earth.com, millions exposed to deadly heat from deforestation. But hey, if it gets too hot in the U.S., we can just cool off at the beach, right? From HuffPost, taking a dip, Labor Day weekend, ? Swimmers face fecal contamination at U.S. beaches. Not just one or two beaches. Listen up. There's been closures this week at many of the country's most popular beach destinations. It's a long-standing and widespread problem. Nearly 2/3 of the beaches tested nationwide had contamination. 2/3, 84% in some cases along the Gulf Coast beaches. Think about that. 84% with that kind of contamination? Oh, and along the Gulf Coast, let's not forget the flesh-eating bacteria and the hydrogen sulfide emitting dead seaweed and dead fish everywhere. What about usable water in general? From MSN, peak water security crisis. Texas A&M researcher warns, new research warns of declining access to safe, reliable, and affordable water in the U.S., urging for better water tracking tools, immediate policy reforms. Millions of Americans now face growing crisis in accessing clean, affordable water. Let's think about this. If, aside from industrial pollution, which is everywhere, and military-industrial complex pollution everywhere, climate engineering operations, aka weather warfare, are ubiquitously contaminating the entire planet with tens of millions of tons of toxic nanoparticles 24/7, 365. Of course, there's no uncontaminated water. I've covered that in this broadcast for years now, peer-reviewed study proving there's not an uncontaminated drop of rain on planet Earth. And then people bounce to, well, we'll just desalinate the oceans. Well, you mean the fecal contaminated oceans? Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And the energy needed to do that and the toxic waste created from that, all bad. All of it's bad. All of it's insane. No, there's no magic solution. And so many people don't want to hear that. If you don't have a magic solution, they don't want to hear it. They put their fingers in their ears and they pretend nothing's wrong until we hit the wall. Not a solution either, is it? Moving on, more on climate engineering operations, chemical cooldowns, and the destruction that they cause. From theweathernetwork.com, destructive hailstorms carved 400-kilometer scar across the prairies. That's in Canada. Thunderstorms caused significant and widespread hail damage throughout the southern portions of Alberta and Saskatchewan. The storms destroyed crops, shattered windows, and defoliated trees. Let's not forget decimating roofs, solar panels. The list is long. Chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. Search the engineering winter section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org to learn more. With extreme off-the-charts heat and burning forests come melting glaciers and way too much water all at once, which will be followed by no water forevermore. From Al Jazeera, behind Pakistan's repeated floods, melting glaciers, depleted forests. Pakistan is facing a multitude of climate emergencies. Its forests are shrinking, glaciers are melting faster than anticipated. There it is again, faster than we thought. Gee, we just didn't know. And now catastrophic rains are devastating communities. Rampant deforestation has eroded natural buffers, while warming mountain temperatures weaken glaciers. All of it happening at once. The climate engineers control the spigot. They decide where it rains, when, and how much, along with how toxic. From the UK Guardian, the water left nothing. Pakistan's Punjab province reels from deadly floods. Devastating drought, deadly deluge, climate engineering, all inseparable. More Middle East coverage from Al Jazeera. 2 million impacted as Pakistan's Punjab faces worst floods in its history. That's the part I wanted to get to. Another from Al Jazeera. Everything has been lost. Kashmir floods, landslides, killed dozens. We don't hear about any of this in the U.S. while we're watching political theater. From Reuters, Pakistan evacuates 1 million people as farming belt hit by worst floods in decades. No, worst in recorded history. They always want to pretend it happened before, so people think, oh, it can't be that bad. Happened before. Pakistan authorities have evacuated more than 1 million people from homes. This is more on the same flooding there, glaciers melting. Question, as I get to the next headline, another form of mass destruction that they can blame on nature. Do frequency-based tectonic weapons actually exist? Short answer, yes. Culling populations from 1,000 different directions. When you microwave millions of watts of power into a seismically sensitive zone, you will create tectonic movement, seismic activity. With that in mind, from AP News, earthquake in eastern Afghanistan destroys villages and kills 800 people with 2,500 injured so far. From the GazetteExpress.com, powerful storm hits West Greece, flooding in Corfu, damage to agriculture, and dozens of villages without power. We see it again and again. Agricultural regions being systematically targeted, flash flood, flash drought, flash freeze, as I just covered in the US. And they can blame it all on nature, slowly but surely, actually not that slowly, curtailing food supplies, control the food, control populations. That's how it works. At geoengineeringwatch.org, we're getting messages from all over the world of people that can no longer grow their garden, that have been doing it for decades. Soil's now completely toxic, soil microbiome dead from the toxic rain. The now devastated ozone layer is raining down UV radiation in the DNA damaging spectrum of UVC. Official sources lying about that as well. And I'm not blaming everything on climate engineering. That is a big mistake when people do that. That completely decimates our credibility. We have destroyed this planet from 1 million different directions. We have been the most horrible stewards of planet Earth imaginable. That must be acknowledged. But on top of that, the intentional manipulation of what's left of the Earth's life support systems, that is a certain near-term recipe for planetary omnicide, period. The conversation must be about climate engineering, exposing it, stopping it. Then we'll assess where we're at, and we must deal with the other sources of damage to the planet, all of them. But we have to start with the biggest hole in the bottom of the boat, and that's climate engineering. I'm just pointing out, to deny that we've been bad stewards of the planet is to completely destroy credibility. for the fight to stop climate engineering. Moving on, more hallmarks of extreme chemical ice nucleation operations from Weather Channel. Shoppers scream as roof collapses in Brazil hailstorm. It's all over the world. They're chemically nucleating everywhere they can to try to cool surface temperatures while they're making the overall warming of the planet worse in the process. What a surprise. Just like the pharmaceutical industrial so-called cure for the human body, you listen to the symptom they're trying to treat, then you listen to the side effects and you wonder who would be insane enough to take that concoction, and many do. From Watchers News, severe hailstorm causes widespread crop and livestock losses in southeastern Alberta, Canada. Parallel to a headline earlier, just a few examples. There are countless more. Extreme hail is now the norm. Climate engineering and patented processes of chemical ice nucleation are core to this equation. It's not nature. When the so-called climate science community blames these flash freak cool downs on global warming or climate change, they are lying. That's simple. To protect their paychecks and pensions. Keep that in mind. Here's another point to ponder. Online self-proclaimed truth-tellers pushing and propagating the ever more shocking lie that climate collapse is just a sensationalized hoax. Who's paying these people to push the very narrative that the controllers and the climate engineers want? Or is it just ideology based in fear? Fear of what is actually unfolding. You decide. But while doing so, consider and remember, to deny the damage to the planet is to undermine our fight against climate engineering. It's to lose half the people that we need to help us in this battle if we're to have any chance of succeeding. Keep the focus on climate engineering. If someone brings up the climate or the state of the climate, point out to them there's no legitimate discussion about that without first and foremost discussing climate engineering. Keep it on that point. Build a bridge, don't burn it. That's how we move this fight forward. You're listening to the weekly installment of Global Alert News, the Bad News Broadcast, installment number 526, September 6, 2025. This is Dane Wigington, your host. Global Alert News, brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of climate intervention operations, known as geoengineering. Global Alert News is aired on a number of AM and FM stations around the country. If any radio station near you is willing to air the GAN broadcast in order to inform their listeners of what Matrix Media won't mention, have them contact us at admin@geoengineeringwatch.org. We'll grant them access to our weekly broadcast for free, of course. Recordings of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Hour broadcast can be found on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org under the recent column and on the Dane Wigington YouTube channel. If you're on our email list, please put us on your email contact book so that our mailouts don't go to the spam files. Please help us to share the groundbreaking documentary, The Dimming, which fully exposes the climate engineering atrocities. This is the A to Z on this issue, with testing that will never be duplicated again by anyone. They will never get access to a NOAA flying lab again as we did. Please share. Help us to expose the data contained in this film. Help us to build our army of the awakened. Best way to share: circulate the direct link to The Dimming by email directly from the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Sharing directly helps us to overcome social media censorship. When viewing our YouTube of The Dimming or Global Alert News or any other Geoengineering Watch video on YouTube, please subscribe, share, and comment. All of this helps us to circulate critically important data to a much wider audience about reaching those that still aren't looking up. Again, start a conversation with Geoengineering Watch awareness-raising materials, which can be found on our homepage. Our only goal, to provide activists what they need to move this fight forward. These materials are so much more effective than running out into the street, pointing at the sky and ranting, which generally shuts people down. Give them shocking images, undeniable images to look at. That's the key to the door. Extremely high-quality printed materials, shocking images, pictures worth 1,000 words. We pass these printed materials on for less than our cost of producing and shipping. We only want to win this war while it still matters. We have new Geoengineering Watch hoodies to go with our Geoengineering Watch shirts, including blue shirts. We are doing our absolute best in spite of limited manpower and resources. We have scannable business cards, bumper stickers, all effective tools to help strike up a conversation on the climate engineering issue. Reaching a critical mass, that's the only way forward in this fight. Those that are participating in their families, that includes military personnel, defense contractors and their families, they must understand they are literally participating in their own demise. They must stand down or we are done. If we can expose it, again, we can stop it from the inside out. If you're willing to share a picture of yourself with a Geoengineering Watch shirt or hoodie, ideally in some crowded location, please send your photo to us so we can post it as part of our activist compilation. That's now part of our materials page. The images help encourage others to make their voices heard in this all-important battle to sound the alarm. Final message to those that are steadfastly committed to exposing and halting the climate engineering insanity, and you know who you are. Again, my deepest thanks to you, forever, always. Quick explanation to those that are new to this issue, to this channel, to this broadcast. Again, climate engineering, stated purpose for what's happening in our skies, to fill the atmosphere with light scattering toxic nanoparticles to deflect some of the sun's incoming thermal energy to slow the warming of the planet. What a great idea. Let's fill the sky with toxic filth that destroys the ozone layer, disrupts the hydrological cycle, and contaminates virtually everything on the ground, every drop of water, all soils, and every breath we take. What a great idea. In reality, there was never any benevolence intended for these operations. They were always meant to be a weapon of power and control. That's exactly what they are now. And we have the entire global climate science community pretending that we could, might do this someday if we get desperate enough. Total insanity, lack of honor, moral bankruptcy from so-called academia. When will they band together, stand up, and tell the truth? When? About the trails we see in our skies. Not condensation, not jet exhaust. We have up-close film footage of these dispersions being turned on and off. Argument's over right there. This is not any normal engine dispersion of any type, not condensation, not jet exhaust. We have up-close photographs of these retrofit nozzles on the wing pylons aimed into the exhaust jet stream to make this look like, quote, jet exhaust, which it isn't. And even the short, bright trails, which many mistake as, quote, condensation, no, they are not in almost all cases. I've been over this many times, but it needs to be brought up again because too many mistake that. If they don't see a perfect grid pattern in their skies, they think everything's fine. Couldn't be further from the truth. Again, the shorter, brighter dispersions, which eventually make the skies silvery white. We have film footage of these being turned on and off. That means they are not condensation, period. And from a high bypass turbofan jet engine, which is all commercial carriers, all military tankers, which often have their transponders turned off, so you know they're doing something nefarious. High bypass turbofan engine, jet-powered fan, 90% of the air that moves through that engine not combusted. We should see nothing from these aircraft, except under very rare circumstances. If you see a dispersion, even a short one, likely that is still not any form of natural trail behind an aircraft because of the engine. Too many making that mistake. And when you see the cobwebby, wispy, hazy clouds, that's dispersions that are scattered and blowing in from every direction. So please study this more, look up more, understand the short dispersions, still dispersions. There are many different layers to this issue, many. Moving on, about feeding the public's normalcy bias till the brutal bitter end. Bread and circus till the moment of impact. From AccuWeather, gas hasn't been this cheap on Labor Day since 2020. Yes, how wonderful. Less expensive gas. That's come at the ultimate cost of destroying what's left of the environment, most specifically, in this case, fracking, permanently poisoning groundwater across the country and around the world. Where's the sanity in this equation? It isn't there. Where's any concern for our survival? From Bloomberg, trade war pushes Canada's current account deficit to record. Just the beginning. The wheels are coming off the proverbial bus. Collapsing biosphere, collapsing economies, collapsing civilizations, desperate power structure, more dangerous than ever, collapsing life. From Reuters, Japan record spending requests on rising debt and social welfare costs. From TradingView.com, China property sales dropped 17.6% in August alone. Housing slump hits sixth straight month. The ship is going down. From the UK Telegraph, France could be about to crash the global economy. They say this could turn into far more than just a political drama in Paris, with worries about government debt and the affordability of lavish welfare systems raising all the time. France is about to trigger a full-blown market crash. From the Washington Post, Italy's new military spending. Bombs, bullets, and the world's longest bridge. Yes, just another day on the orbiting asylum. With life completely collapsing on every front, the human race uses the last resources for bombs and bullets. Mind-numbing stupidity. There's more from Bloomberg. The Czechs plan $14 billion deficit with bigger spending on defense. Yeah, more bombs, more bullets. From a primary Polish media source whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce, Poland plans record defense spending of 4.8% of GDP. There are more headlines on this theme, but you get the idea. Bombs and bullets on a dying planet. Insanity. Here's a footnote as the anniversary of 9/11 approaches. Search and investigate the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry. Search and review this source, if the truth matters. With collapsing ecosystems around the world will come conflict, chaos, and carnage on an unimaginable scale. The money printers now routinely carry out such atrocities in sight of the entire world, with so many so far willing to look the other way, not only denying or justifying the atrocities, but also each pretending that their part of the boat isn't sinking, except it is. From Esquire.com, the most dangerous words in America. In the new autocracy, war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. Language itself is now weaponized against us. About empires. They require endless amounts of energy to fuel their war machines, most especially as the world is circling the drain. Keep that in mind. From thefinancialtimes.com, is Trump's mission in Venezuela to fight drugs or to topple its leader? Report says Venezuela has complained to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres about the U.S. deployment, claiming Trump is planning on an attack. It's a massive propaganda operation to justify what the experts call kinetic action, meaning military intervention. Venezuela's UN ambassador told reporters, nothing new. U.S. has invaded, occupied, and or destabilized about 100 countries in as many years. Keep that in mind. It's not about freedom and democracy at the point of a gun. It's about resources. Follow me through with this from the UK Independent. Beware how and why Trump attacked a Venezuelan drug cartel boat. The attack comes a day after the Venezuelan president accused the Trump administration of plotting a military invasion of his country. Many would ask why? Stick with me. I'll get to that. From CBS News, U.S. military strikes drug-carrying boat from Venezuela, Rubio says. Well, if Marco Rubio says it must be true, right? Yeah, right. From YN News, Venezuelan President Maduro accuses U.S. of targeting nation with warships. From Fox News, propaganda. Maduro turned Venezuela into the biggest threat to U.S. national security. Really? First it's Iran, then Iraq, now Venezuela. Next it's going to be Tijuana, right? If there's something there the U.S. wants. From Bloomberg, why Trump is deploying U.S. warships near Venezuela. Okay, let's stop with the headlines and get to the point. Is the U.S. criminal cartel that masquerades as a legitimate government, a government that has routinely trafficked drugs in the past to fund covert operations, are they truly just concerned about the welfare of Americans? The same Americans that are sprayed like lab rats from the sky day in and day out? Really? Toxins added to our water supplies, so-called safe and effective mandatory medical treatments, hundreds of open-air biological tests conducted on innocent, unknowing U.S. civilians, as documented by the Washington Post and other major sources. Yes, that's the military juggernaut that has routinely orchestrated or outright lied about their excuses to topple countries and confiscate their resources. Again, Iraq's non-existent WMDs come to mind, the fabricated Gulf of Tonkin incident used to trigger the Vietnam War that killed some 60,000 Americans along with countless civilians. So again, our government is gearing up for war with Venezuela to save us from drugs? Really? Here's a reminder. Rewind from Vice News. Afghanistan's opium business boomed under U.S. occupation, about 500% increase. So here's the bottom line. Just the latest example from a dying empire on a dying planet. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. Not many know that, but that is the fact of the matter. I wonder why we're gearing up to topple that nation and take it over. Not hard to figure that out. How can it be that so many are so willfully blind, so morally apathetic, and so willing to sit the bench till the moment of impact? This must change or we have no chance. None. Here's a point to ponder from thecollapsechronicle.com. Collapse and the consensus trance. A world we cannot see. Collapse surrounds us, yet most people can't see it. We live through record-breaking heat waves, vanishing ice, mass extinctions, and economic volatility, along with controller-orchestrated conflict, chaos, and carnage. But these signals are routinely translated away, cast as anomalies, temporary setbacks, or even opportunities. For the record, collapse isn't hidden because the evidence is unclear. It's hidden because of our culture that's organized to prevent us from seeing it. Yes, the consensus trance. A trance is not only an individual phenomenon, entire civilizations can be held in collective hypnosis. The phrase consensus trance is used to describe how societies condition individuals into shared ways of seeing and not seeing. From birth, we're trained to inhabit it. We learn the categories, values, and priorities that sustain industrial culture. We're perpetually programmed to believe that human ingenuity can overcome natural limits, that economic growth equals progress, and that collapse happens only to other less advanced societies. This trance, this mass formation psychosis, isn't accidental. It's maintained through institutions that reproduce its logic. Schools drill us into obedience to industrial rhythms, clocks, bells, productivity, competition. Media saturates us with images of breakthrough and imminent renewal, reinforcing the myth that technological progress is perpetual and endless. Media systems don't merely reflect reality, they actively shape it. They fabricate it, policing the boundaries of what can be thought and what can be spoken. Politics offers the appearance of choice, but all mainstream parties converge on the same commitment to perpetual growth on a finite planet with finite resources. Can't happen. Even science is co-opted, securing funding through techno-solutionist promises or framing ecological crises as engineering puzzles rather than structural limits that cannot be exceeded. The trance is also ritualized in daily life. Advertising, national holidays, even the architecture of cities encode the myth of perpetual progress and expansion. Collapse becomes not only unimaginable, but impolite, taboo, even deviant. When ecological limits intrude, firestorm smoke choking a city, flooded homes on the evening news, empty supermarket shelves after a supply shock, they are reframed as anomalies, temporary setbacks to be corrected by innovation, markets, or political resolve. Good luck with all of that. Like the air we breathe, the trance, the mass formation psychosis is invisible because it's total. Even when reality intrudes, we quickly translate it back into familiar terms. What remains most firmly unspoken is the implication of overshoot, contraction, and die-off. Ambivalence is a layered consciousness. To know collapse is real, yet to behave as though it isn't real. We scroll past footage of burning forests, digest the gravity of it all, and then book a holiday flight or check our pension fund as though the world were stable when it's anything but. The knowledge is there, but it's partitioned, allowed into awareness only briefly before being folded back into routines that depend on ignoring it. Such ambivalence isn't an individual failing, it's the natural outcome of being socialized into the consensus trance. Most, consciously or unconsciously, know and understand that to fully acknowledge collapse would risk alienation from community, family, friends, followed by despair or even paralysis. Therefore, far too many compartmentalize and maintain a surface adherence to the trance while allowing collapse knowledge to remain in the margins of thought, to be accessed only in moments of crisis. If you've ever felt torn between knowing collapse and still living within normal routines, this is not hypocrisy or weakness, but rather the cultural condition that we all inhabit. When you begin to see through the trance, the loneliness that follows is not madness. It is simply the disorientation of noticing what others cannot. For many, the first crack in the trance is anger. This anger isn't meaningless because it shows moral concern. It shows care for the living world and each other. For those who have already begun to see beyond the trance, this framing explains the loneliness. You're not maladjusted. Again, you're simply perceiving what others cannot. Again, collapse isn't hidden because the evidence is weak. It's hidden because we live inside a consensus trance, a socially shared hypnosis sustained by ambivalence and cultural stories. Time to wake up. Time to break the programming. Time to break the chains of the trance. Time to reevaluate. Why are we here at this most critical crossroad in time? What is our point? What's our purpose? What's our mission? How can we best serve our posterity, the web of life, and the planet on which both completely and totally depend? As I stated at the close of the dimming documentary, any one of us could be the final pebble to trigger the landslide of awakening. That is a life worth living and worthy of our Maker. The first and most important leap we can collectively make in the right direction is to expose and halt the climate engineering operations, aka weather, chemical, and biological warfare on a Manhattan Project scale. This would allow the planet to respond on its own to the damage already done. If we can make it this far, it would at least buy time to assess other challenges. And that is absolutely worth fighting for. Check the activist suggestions link on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for specific instructions on how you can help to move this fight forward. Please, make your voice heard, make every single day count. Until next week, this is Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org.